Hey guys, in today's video, I want to answer the question, does Deuteronomy 18 verses 18 through 22 apply to those who call themselves prophets today? I want to look at that, so stay tuned. So let me start off with, first of all, reading Deuteronomy 18 through 22. It says here, I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. It shall come about that whoever will not listen to my words, which he shall speak in my name, I myself require it of him. But the prophet who speaks a word presumptuously in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or which he speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. You may say in your heart, how will we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him. So, in this passage, you see that God is speaking, and he is basically showing the children of Israel how they can recognize a true prophet from a false prophet. Someone who's really speaking forth the word of the Lord versus someone who is just speaking presumptuously from his own heart. A lot of people say if a prophet who prophesies today doesn't get the word right, or if the word is not accurate, if the word doesn't come to pass, then that prophet should be put to death. And they base that on this passage. They say here, because it says, well, if this prophet speaks presumptuously in my name, then this prophet shall die. This prophet shall be put to death. So a lot of people use that, especially cessationists who say, well, you know, if you're a prophet, you should have 100% accuracy in the words that you're prophesying. You can't make a mistake. If you make a mistake, then you're a false prophet. You should be put to death. But is that truly what is being meant here in this passage of Scripture? So let me unpack this for you. So to answer the question, does this passage apply to prophets today? I'm going to say yes, it does. But I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. First of all, we need to understand what it means when it says that they were speaking presumptuously. So what this means is that the word there has to do with the fact that the prophets were pretending to speak from God and they were deceiving the people. So God considers this a serious issue where he's saying, hey, these prophets, they were pretending to speak for me. There's rebellion going on the inside of them, in their hearts, and there's such rebellion, such pride that they were saying that they had heard from God, even though they had not heard from God. They were saying, thus saith the Lord, even though the Lord had not spoken. And so the issue was, this is a serious thing because they were leading people astray. They were deceiving the people. And God hates deception. God hates lying. And God does not appreciate when people stand and pretend to hear from him or pretend to say, this is what God has said when God hasn't spoken to them. So the issue is that back then in the Old Testament, that wasn't tolerated, and that shouldn't be tolerated now under the New Covenant or in the New Testament. So yes, it applies. But so then the question is then, why do we not kill prophets then today? See, that's the issue. A lot of people say, well, prophets, if they miss it, they should get killed. That's what happened in the Old Testament. So prophets today, if they prophesy something inaccurate and it doesn't come to pass, then they're a false prophet. They should be put to death. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't say that today. They wouldn't say, oh, that person should be put to death. But they do believe that, well, this person's a false prophet because this scripture says that every word that a true prophet says should come to pass. The reason why we don't put prophets to death in today's day and age is not because we are under the new covenant. It's not because we're under grace now, because a lot of people think, well, we're under grace and therefore prophecy is different now. And It's not because God is nicer or Jesus is more loving than God, the Father in the Old Testament. And that's a big issue. People think, well, the God of the Old Testament is different than the God of the New Testament. I'm not going to go there in this video. But the issue here, the reason why we don't put prophets to death today is because in the Old Testament, prophets, they were not only responsible for the spiritual direction of the nation, but they were also responsible for the civil penalties. So they executed civil justice. They administered civil justice. In today's day and age, the church, we're not administering civil government. That's why there's a separation between church and state. So, but in Israel's day and age, the nation of Israel, the prophets, they provided prophecies that led and directed the nation spiritually, but also they administered civil justice and civil government. So because Israel was a theocracy. So that is the reason why we're not killing and stoning prophets today. But yes, Deuteronomy 18 through 22 does apply to us today and to prophets today, because it's a serious thing to speak for God and to speak in his name and to say, hey, this is what the Lord is saying, or this is what the Lord has said. And if you haven't heard him, you need to very much walk in humility and just don't do it. If you haven't heard God and if you're not clear, then don't be presumptuous. This whole word about them prophesying presumptuously has to do with the fact that they intentionally were rebelling and they were intentionally pretending. They were intentionally trying to deceive the people and mislead them and to lead them astray. And so that's what the connotation there is. But if your heart is one of humility and purity and saying, and you're believing you're hearing the Lord clearly and accurately, then I would say, don't worry about this. But it's a serious business to speak for God. So we want to be clear. We want to know that we're hearing from the Lord. But this answers that question. And so I hope this blessed you. I hope this brought some biblical understanding and insight for you in terms of this. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you want to get more content, I'm bringing out content every Tuesday and Thursday. Subscribe below. If you want to know more about my ministry, go to justinlongministries.org. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.